Hey guys, hope you're having a good day. So today we're going to get into this free Toro 22-inch recycler with a Briggs 190cc engine on it. So the backstory on this one was it was free on the curb. Someone was throwing this out a couple weeks ago, so I grabbed it and we're going to see what it needs to get going again. If we can't get it going, we'll figure out why they tossed it in the first place. So let's do a quick walk around and then we'll get into it. Okay, so first off, looks like someone wanted to get a little custom and spray painted the deck black. This isn't actually one of the new ones that's supposed to be black. It's supposed to be red here, so we got a little custom touch there. And we've got a personal pace system. It looks like we've got maybe some kind of a broken linkage here. And I think with this lever, this is supposed to be one of those blade control ones where you can idle the engine without actually spinning the blade. As far as the self-propel goes, it sounds kind of ratchety. I'm not sure how this is going to come through on camera, but so we may need to open up the rear wheels and see if those gears need to be lubricated or not. But outside of that, everything looks to be in order. So let's get you set up and we'll check gas, oil, and then look at the blade. Okay, checking gas and oil before we flip this thing up here. And that is bone dry. I'll have to get you guys a photo. Oil, kind of just want to see that there's some in there. Yeah, maybe overfilled, but we're kind of on a slope here. So let's check the blade. So we mainly just want to see that the blade or the crankshaft isn't bent. It looks like we got a deck repair here that's looks to still be solid. Just hold my thumb here and check it. We're okay there. You can kind of hear the clutch mechanism moving around, so maybe this thing's been sitting for a while. But let's keep going. Okay, well I think I'm going to go the route. I'm just going to put some gas in here and see if it'll start normal. We can go the carb spray route if we need to after that, but we got to figure out how to start this thing. So this guy is the, I think, blade engagement bail, so we don't have to touch that starting it. And I think this is our engine kill. So we should be able to just pull on this thing and it should start by itself. So let's get some gas in there. All right, that should be enough for a test start. No primer on this one, automatic choke, so let's just pull on it. Might have to go the carb spray route. Holy cow. Need a new one of those. Okay. All right, I don't know if you guys can tell, it was backfiring out of the carb. So I think we might have to take that shroud off and look at the flywheel key. So we'll do that next. Okay, so to get to where we need to go, we gotta get this kind of cosmetic plastic piece off. The tank's gotta come off, and then we gotta take the blower shroud off to look at that flywheel key. So here we go. Kind of let that hang there. These are kind of looser than I would have expected. Hopefully someone wasn't already in here. Here's some more proof someone was in there. 2 separate length screws, both in the back. Okay, let me bring you closer here. So we're going to take a look, see if the keyway and the crank and the flywheel, and they match up. So we are not sheared. So that's not it. So I got to get this thing put back together, and we'll keep looking. Just checking things quick before I throw this back together. Seems okay. Let's get this guy back on. These are actually the wrong screws too. They're like some gold color. They're supposed to be black. All right, so we're back together. Okay, so I think I'm gonna have to think about this one for a second. Flywheel key was good, and the popping out of the carb seems to be like a timing issue. So I think the next step might be pulling the plug, seeing if we can see the valves moving. If not, I think it might be an internal engine issue, but hopefully it's just maybe a valve stuck open. I don't know. So that's the next step. Okay, down here at the plug, see if we got a clue as to what's going on here. And I forgot to put this kill ground on. I'll have to do that. But let's see here. Yeah, it's pretty oily. I don't know if it's fouled or not, but it was firing out of the intake. So we'd try a new one, I guess. But I think I want to kind of get you to a position where you can see in there, and you'll be able to tell me if you can see valves moving up and down as I pull this over. Let's get this guy fixed first. Hopefully I can sneak up underneath here. I think that's important. I think that's the ground to kill it. So if that's not hooked up, I think we wouldn't be able to shut it off with the switch up on the handle. So I kind of think with those bolts being loose and in the wrong positions, someone was already in here checking the flywheel key and then gave up on it. Okay, I think the best shot I can get, I think you're looking at the exhaust valve right there. So we're going to be looking for that to be moving up and down as I pull this over. That's moving. Okay, last ditch for today. I'm just going to throw a new plug into it before I think stopping for the day and just thinking about this. See if this changes anything. One more. I think it's the same result. Okay, same thing, popping out of the carb, sounds like. So yeah, I think we found the issue. And I think the guy or girl before me took the shroud off to look at a flywheel key that wasn't sheared, and then they tossed it. So like I said, I think I'm gonna have to think about this one overnight and come back with a plan of attack. All right, well, it's a new day. Had a chance to sleep on this one and think about it, and I think we're down to two possibilities here. The first being more likely is that the intake valve is stuck open. So we were able to look through the spark plug hole and see the exhaust one moving up and down, but we really can't see the intake one since it's underneath the head here, up higher. And I think that is more likely because people around here for some reason tend to just leave their mowers out in the elements. So I think maybe some moisture got in there and stuck the valve, or maybe something crawled in there and maybe has a nest or something that's holding the valve open. So that's the first one. The second one, which I think is probably less likely, is that the gear and the lobes on the camshaft got out of sync. So to inspect for both of those, we're going to have to pull this thing all apart, which I kind of thought I was going to have to do anyway when I went to put it back together. But let me blow this apart again, and I'll bring you back when we're ready to take off the head. We'll be able to inspect the valve, and then also with everything off, we'll be able to turn the flywheel and check the magnet position at top dead center to see if maybe a valve is off time or something. So that's what we're going to do. I'll get that done and bring you back. Okay, got you brought in here. You might notice it's wet right here. That's because the fuel line's actually leaking, because it looks like someone used a vacuum line instead of a fuel line. So getting flashbacks of that snapper I did last year on this one. But let's take these head bolts out. We got to take the exhaust cover off first, and hopefully we can sneak the head out behind this carburetor bracket. Otherwise we'll have to take that off too. All right, here we go, 1/2 inch. I'm actually going to have to get a piece of cardboard or something to do a bolt map for myself for later, in case these are different lengths. So let me go get that. Okay, just a crude piece of cardboard to show where they went. See if they're all hand tight now, maybe not. Okay, all those accounted for. So we're hoping that the intake valve right here is just stuck open. Oh, it's a seat. That'll do it. Well, that's a new one for me. I wonder if I can get this kind of reseated without having to take the engine off the mower. I know if you can get them back in and seated, you can kind of do a punch around the perimeter there to kind of shrink up the material around it, cylinder material, to kind of hold it in there. Okay, well, that was it. All right, well, we're like 2 months later. This guy kind of got put on the back burner after I found that, and I didn't really want to leave it as is without at least trying to get it running before stopping. So I think this is going to kind of be a part 1-2 video, because how involved it's getting, and never had to do valve work before, so it should get pretty interesting. So we got to stake that seat back into the block, and to do that we got to pull all this exhaust side of the engine off. So we'll get you set up and we'll start digging into it. So the exhaust has got to come off, because we got to get to this valve cover back here that's behind the muffler here. That's so we can take the valve out, make sure it's not bent, and then kind of clean up the seat area where it goes into the block so we can tap it back in. Looks like we got a T25 here on the back of the muffler guard, 7/16. Those were loose. And this guy should come off of it with the exhaust. This is the auto choke that works off of the temperature of the muffler, if you didn't know. So just actuates based off the temperature there. Three-eighths. There's a gasket behind here I'm trying not to tear, although I think I already just did that. Yeah, I tore it at the top. There's a gasket I tore. We'll have to add that to the list. Okay, the rest of that gasket fell off, and that's super brittle. So if this thing runs, I think I'm going to put it together as is, just to see if it'll run, make sure there's no severe engine problems, and then we'll probably have to do like gaskets and stuff in part 2. But new tool, Briggs spring compressor. Let's see if we can't get this off of here. And I've got it rotated so that it's as closed as it could possibly be, so there's the least amount of spring pressure on this. And I think we gotta look for I wonder if I could just do it by hand. I think there's like a keyway in these spring retainers. Oh, just popped off. Okay. That didn't really help me out. Okay, let's compress that again. You guys having fun? Watch me struggle with this. Pull the valve out. It's like a seal. I don't know if that was supposed to come out or not, probably not. Spring's okay, looks like. Here's the keeper. So yeah, you just have to kind of jog it. So my guess is when I put it back in, I want to go in farther and then pull it around the valve stem. So I don't think this is supposed to come out. Like an oil seal. So we might have 2 things we got to knock in here, but it doesn't look bent. I'll have to roll it on the table inside to be sure, but we got it out. Oh, and the seat. So this is the back side of it, the surface I wanted to clean up before we tap it back in. Let me pull you around to the other side. I'm assuming the seal went in all the way, and then we've got to clean this up. But I'll have to look up how to put that seal in. It's probably just going to be a socket and tap, but we'll see. All right, I think they're about as debris free as they're going to get. Let's see if we can get this head gasket off without a problem. We are going to reuse this too, like it or not, because I don't want to sink a bunch of money into this thing if it's not going to run. So I could not find what I needed to for this guy. So I'm going to try to drop that in there using the valve and then hit it with a socket just to reseat it, because it's not very tight in the bore there. Okay, seems to be in there. Now the seat, got to go right here, and I took the gasket off because we'll need to kind of punch around it to make sure that the material squeezes the seat in there and stays in there. So we're going to drop that in there. And we're going to use the valve to knock it back in there. Nice and square. Make sure we're all the way down, so we're not hammering on a crank or hammering on a camshaft. Yeah, we're all the way down there. So you guys probably don't like this. I don't like it either. Okay, I think that's in there. Let's see if it moves. Yep. It's not going down because there's no spring on it. Okay. Let's pull this guy back out because we got to dimple this material now. Make sure that stays in there. Again, first time doing this, so okay, I don't even know if that's enough or too little or what, but we're going to move forward with that, I think. See what kind of valve clearance we've got. And rotate it here. This is 4 or 5 thousandths. We've got none. And we've got none on exhaust. So it needs a valve job. Let's see what will fit in there. Let's try 2. Yeah. So it's gonna need a valve job. But let's throw it back together, see if it'll run. We're getting drizzled on, so I'm probably gonna have to stop for today. All right, so it's the next day, and I had pretty much all night last night to think about how I would have done things a little differently from the previous day. So if it's not already apparent, please don't use this as a how-to. This is me just trying to figure this out for the first time and making questionable choices along the way. There's a lot of videos on YouTube about doing this the proper way, so I'd reference those. But I wanted to cover a couple things from yesterday that I thought about last night, and then we'll keep going with this. So the first one is these dimples and really the location. So I was up on this kind of flat head portion, and I really think I should have been down on this ramp to actually deform the material right next to the seat instead of kind of up higher. So I don't know if what we did already is going to make a difference as far as this far into the material, but I think I'm going to run another set around this ramped part just to be sure. Probably won't film that, I'll just get that done. But the next one I want to talk about is using the valve as a hammering point to reseat this. Okay, so yesterday we used the valve itself to kind of hammer on to reseat the seat into the head. And I think if I would have known that there was 0 valve clearance between the camshaft tappet here and the valve stem, I would not have done that, because we essentially transferred force into the camshaft. And if you don't know, those are brittle if you hit them perpendicularly, which this is the orientation of the camshaft here. The 2 lobes are going to be going up and down, moving the valves up and down here. So I think in the future I would actually just use a socket to seat that in there. I'm sure there's a special tool that has a taper to seat them, but I don't have any of that. So the second risk that we ran too is bending the valve, because the seat might have been cocked a little bit as you're hammering on it straight. The guide will hold it right here, and if it's cocked this way over here, it could bend the valve, but we didn't do that, luckily. And kind of what I'm worried about is damage to the camshaft, so we'll only find that out a little bit later. So let's move on to valve adjustment. We had 0 on intake and exhaust, and let me get you set up and I'll show you how I found that out. So we're going to use the exhaust valve as an example here. So normally you would put a feeler gauge between the valve stem and the top of the tappet, which is right here. and there's supposed to be a gap. So we're already at top dead center up here, and there's nothing. And even worse, the valve will turn if I put my thumb on it. I don't know if you can see that on the view you're in, but the valve's turning. So that means it's not fully seated on the exhaust seat, and the intake's the same way. So just showing you that this one spins too. So that's not supposed to happen at top dead center. Those are supposed to be seated, and you're not supposed to be able to just turn it with your thumb. So we're gonna have to pull this out and slowly remove material off the tip of this here, which I don't have the best tools for. So what I'm gonna plan on doing is putting this in the kind of rubber jaws of my vise and taking a file and doing a couple strokes off the top and coming back and checking it. So the intake's supposed to be 4 thousandths and the exhaust supposed to be 6. So that's what I'm gonna be checking against. And I probably won't show that either. I'll probably show you a picture of the setup, but it's gonna be a lot of me running back and forth checking this. So I'll bring you back when we got the right clearances. And if you wanted to know how I checked that the valve was not bent, I just chucked it in a drill and turned it. So we're good. So we're good there. The only problem is the face is not great the whole way around. Primarily right there. So I don't have the stuff to do valve lapping and all that, but we can at the very least get the clearances right before putting this back together and trying it. Okay, so we got another newbie story time. I took too much off the end. I kept going back and forth and needing some more. So I don't know if I bumped the flywheel during the process or what, but we are way off. So I took way too much off of this valve. So this valve is essentially junk. We can't use it. So luckily I checked my blown up mower stash, and we got another 190cc that had a good valve. So we stuck that in there. And I think we're right at 9 thousandths. 10 won't fit in there. Here's 9. That fits in there real tight. So we obviously can't make it smaller, so we're gonna have to run with this one. So I'm kind of lucky I had that blown up mower, but also kind of mad that I messed that up. I wasn't patient enough just to take a little bit off at a time. So I guess that's a lesson learned there. And I did roll it around again just to double check the exhaust, and we're right at 6. So you can see that, and it doesn't rotate. So I think when I showed you guys that earlier, I think I had the flywheel not in the exact right position. Maybe this was bumped up a little bit, like a decompression. Maybe I was on the intake stroke and not the compression stroke. I don't know, but yeah, 7 will not fit in there, well, barely. So we got pretty much 7 on the exhaust and about 8, 9 on the intake that we're gonna have to run with. So like I said, another first timer mistake on this one, but hopefully you guys learn from me. Just gotta be a little bit more patient in the future. So we gotta get that spring and keeper on, so that should be an adventure here. All right, so we got this pinched in here. And what I'm gonna be doing is trying to pull it or push it onto the stem. So I got the kind of clearance hole on the inside, and we're gonna try it that way. So my hope is this actually pulls the valve in tighter and we'll get tighter clearance, but I don't think I'll be that lucky. So we got the right one here, the used replacement. Okay, and I think we got that seated there. So yeah, both valves aren't turning now, so we're good to go. Let's check the clearances on the intake now that we got the spring in there, just so we know where we're at. So let's start with 10. That will not go in. 9, very tight. 8's a little looser. So looks like we got 9 thousandths, which is double what we need. We needed 4. So let's roll this around again just to double check. 6 thousandths. A little loose. 7. Little drag, so I'd say 7 on the exhaust. And then we'll start with 10 on the intake. Won't go in. 9's a tough fit. Here's 8. And that's loose. All right, so after that last clip and seeing that we're over double what we needed clearance-wise on the intake valve, I decided to just bite the bullet, run to the parts store, buy what we need to do some valve lapping here. So I'm thinking if we lap this valve, it'll bring us closer to the tappet, improve our clearances, and if it doesn't bring us all the way into range, it'll at least tell me if we need to buy a new valve here to fix my mistake from earlier, as long as there's nothing else major wrong with the engine if we get this thing running. So I think what I'm gonna do is pull this valve out, get you guys set up. We'll run through this, double check the clearances after that, and then get this thing thrown back together. Put this in and out is at least giving me a lot of practice on that tool. Okay, valve out. Okay, well, we got this out of there, and I cleaned it up a little bit on the wire wheel, and the face of it's pretty hammered already from that blown up engine. So it probably needs to be refaced, but I definitely don't have the tools for that one. So we're gonna see how far we can get with just lapping this. So we'll need to smear some of this stuff on there, put it in there, and kind of use this suction cup to grind a new sealing ring into this. So this was the old one for reference if you guys were curious. So we'll get some of this compound on here and get going. And if I didn't show it already, here's those extra dimples I put in on the ramped area of the block here, if you were curious. First time doing this too, so should be interesting. So you can kind of hear the pitch change, and I think that's what you want to hear. That's the valve finding a good contact surface with the seat. This doesn't want to suction that well. All right, well, let's pull this out of here. I probably went a little longer than I should have, but I think the more we do this, the better our clearances are going to get. And I think if this was refaced, we should be able to see like a ring around it to make sure that we've gone far enough on lapping, but I've got no idea. I think we got a pretty solid, unpolished part around the whole valve. So that might be okay. Let's get this stuff out of here. Definitely want to clean this stuff out because I think it'll just destroy it more. And get some carb spray. So let's move around the other side. We'll get this put in here and see what our clearances are after we lapped it. There is a visible difference on the seat after we lapped it, so let's see if this helped us out. Let's try 8. No, it really didn't help. Yeah, still 9. Let's see, 10. Yeah, 10 doesn't fit. 9 feels a little tighter. Yeah, 8's kind of loose. So that really didn't help us out here as far as clearances went. So if we get this back together and it runs okay, we'll probably have to put a new valve in it. So that kind of sucks. Let me get that spring put back in, and I think we'll be back to where we were at the beginning of this clip. We'll start putting this back together. All right, I got the breather prepped to be put back on, and since we know that we'll need a replacement valve to get the right clearances, I'm just gonna put a little bit of RTV where the gasket broke, because we will have to replace this gasket eventually in the future anyway, if we choose to move forward with this mower and we don't run into any other issues if this runs. So not the best solution, but it should seal up. That goes on that way. This will probably leak. Knowing my luck with this mower. And our exhaust, we've got a gasket, the auto choke mechanism, and then another gasket. It's got to go around that there. Okay. Let's move around to the head. Okay, well the block and the head are wire wheeled, and we are going to reuse this head gasket that came off of it because we have not heard this run yet. And we don't know if there's any other internal engine problems. And this will have to come back off anyway to do that valve. So we're just gonna throw it back together. Let's see if we've got a good engine or not. All right, so torque for these I found online was 140 inch-pounds. So we'll set that here. Go in crisscross pattern. Okay. All right, well that's pretty much back together. I got to get the rest of this put back together, which you already seen me do. So I'm just gonna knock that out and I'll bring you back when we're ready to give this another shot. I wanted to show you this creative solution that I just noticed. So there's supposed to be, I guess, a threaded insert here and a regular bolt through the air filter cover. And they put a nut here, and the problem with that is there's a gap letting unfiltered air into the intake. So it's not a good sign either. So, all right, let me get this done. Okay, back together. Time to get some gas. All right, little splash of gas because a lot of that evaporated out because of that bad fuel line. So, moment of truth. Wow, okay, so a lot of smoke out of the exhaust. I don't know if that's just from it sitting and there's maybe some oil in the muffler that needs to burn off, but the self-propel is constantly moving. So let's see if we can disable that and just let it run, see if it clears out. So we got like another wing nut solution here, and the cable's wrapped around, twisted around the handlebar, so that's probably putting too much pressure on it. So we'll just leave that loose there. There should be no tension on the cable, and we'll see if we can't get this thing to stay still. All right, well, the self-propel's still moving, so that didn't work. So we got some kind of self-propel engagement problem, and it still seemed to be smoking as I was sitting there letting it run. And we're getting rained on, so we got to pack it up for the day, I think. Okay, guys, well, the rain has stopped, and I figured this is a good stopping point for this one anyway. You know, I did mention before that we might do a part 2 on this one, but I don't think we're going to get there, because as it was raining, I was putting together a list of what I think it still needs, and this is the list. And it's not small, so I'm estimating that all that's probably going to be somewhere between $100 and $150 just in parts to throw at this thing. And with that, we saw the engine shakes quite a bit and it smokes. Now the smoking might actually be that valve seal popped loose again, so it probably needs another valve seal. And we don't even know if the blade clutch works because both the cables are bad. So I actually went and disconnected the self-propel altogether. That actually didn't stop it. I had to manually move the gearbox down here to loosen up the cable because the cable's seized in the jacket. So it needs both cables, it needs all those engine parts, and quite a bit more time, I think. So I think we're gonna wrap this one here. Let me know what you guys think. Should I keep going on it? Should I just give up? I'm kind of tending on giving up with that sizable list there. So hopefully what we covered helped somebody out, or you guys found this entertaining. I'm sure it was entertaining for you guys. So thanks for joining me on this one, and I'll catch you on the next one.